Sup guys, Eden here, and welcome to, Eden reads Higanbana no Saku Yoru, also known as The Spider Lilies Bloom at Night. This is an 07th expansion game, or rather a kinetic novel, visual novel by Ryukishi7. He's a really brilliant writer, guys. A lot of his stories, if you guys know, he's done Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, he's done Umineko no Naku Koro ni. Those are his most popular works. He's also done Rose Gun Days. A lot of his visual novels are based on, telling some kind of story. In Higanbana, or in Higurashi, it was about friendship, and Umineko, it was about love, and I've actually read the Higanbana stories. This is the first night, and when I get done with the first night, I will be going into the second night. Each of these nights is a series of short stories, and each short story focuses on a certain lesson that you need to learn, and in Higanbana, it was a strong lesson regarding bullying. So, without further ado, we're just going to get straight into this. I want you guys to enjoy this. It's a different take on reading, and we'll just jump straight into this, and I really hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know if the first story is to your liking, and if you like it, awesome, we'll continue this, and if not, we'll just go from there and see how it works, okay? So, let's jump right into this. Alright. A man exits a bathroom stall and leaves a lone girl behind him. As for the girl's appearance, if described with a word, it was strange. She wore socks and indoor slippers. If we suppose this is a school, then there's nothing strange about that. On her back, she was wearing a red backpack. If we suppose that this is a school, then there's nothing strange about that. And she was wearing a bra and panties. There was nothing strange about the girl wearing underwear in itself. However, for there to be a girl in her underwear in a bathroom stall, that was strange. For her to wear her backpack while in her underwear, that was strange. And for a girl and a man to be alone in a bathroom stall, that was strange. Even if we imagined that kind of unseemly thing could have happened here, they couldn't have been described as anything but strange. As the echoes of the man's footsteps began to fade away, the girl remembered she was helplessly forgotten, alone in the former school building. As she sank to the floor, she began to shed her tears while sobbing. Meso.
たすぎてもがくだけの巡りよ枯れないで私たちは美しいまま踊ろうよ線の月閉ざされた目をえぐるようにほのかにねあなたいざなう落ちて笑う私
There are large numbers of students in this school. Girls make up half the crowd. And so, perhaps it's no longer appropriate to keep calling the girl in our story the girl. Also, if we can tear into her privacy and dignity to satisfy our own curiosity, then her name can easily be revealed here as well. The girl's name is Marie Moria. A blank year student in the 8th class, she was a kind-hearted girl who worked as a member of the animal raising committee. Her grades were average. She wasn't strong in any subject. PE was her weakest. It could have been said that she was even somewhat below average. Looking at her background, Marie has assumed many class managerial positions such as committee member and team leader. Unfortunately, it's not as if she had any ambition to attain them. Rather, others forced the position onto her, and she didn't have the strength to refuse them. There were times when she had thought of saying farewell to her weaker self. And yet, if she had been able to change herself by thought alone, no one would have had to suffer. And so, without love for herself, Marie headed down the dark alley called today. For how long had Marie been forced to do the things she didn't want to do? And what kind of shameless deeds were she being forced to do? As for that, there's no need to explain it in detail. The girl did things she didn't want to do, and continued being humiliated. That's the simplest way to describe her current circumstances. How had she strayed into this sad fate? One might muse about the excuses for why she was so meager and worthless. She had no choice but to be like that. There was no other way. No way to refuse it. That it was always for the best. Nevertheless, these reasons didn't help her situation one bit. Wanting something in order to make up for one weakness is to invite another weakness. And payment to make up for that weakness, again, results in the search for another something to compensate. It seemed like an ant-lion pit, a spiral of malice without end. Already, many of Marie's weaknesses had been gripped by a man, and she couldn't put into words her refusal to do the many shameless things he asked of her. For Marie, she didn't have any friends she could ask for help with this kind of problem. She had family, but there wasn't anyone she could trust if she spoke her mind. There were 3 children in the Moria family, but Marie's sisters were far more talented. Since Marie was always on the bottom rung, even just by being alive, day by day, she had her sister's superiority and her own incapabilities thrust upon her. Eventually, Marie became servile, and soon she became alone at school and at home. In her distress, if she were to ask for help, she feared she would doubtlessly be compared to the greatness of her sisters and suffer for it. And so, when she was dropped into this ant-lion pit, Marie couldn't think of anyone in her family to ask for help. To her, what she thought was for the best was constantly backfiring and backfiring. To her, a girl who couldn't even refuse joining the animal raising committee when pressed, how could she escape this malicious trap? And so, in other words, this was basically, even though it's very, very pitiful for her, a natural consequence. Marie slowly puts on her clothes and once again dons her backpack. And with its weight, she was reminded of the many disgraceful things she was forced to do mere moments ago. And so, for Marie, from the moment she adorned the backpack, she felt as though she was being controlled by that man. Why did it have to turn out like this? In this oxygen-deprived air, I idly thought to myself that even if there was a goldfish that could swim in mid-air, it would have no choice but to stick its head in the water to breathe. It was my fault from the very beginning. I went and did something I wasn't supposed to, and Sensei found out and blamed me for it. That was something very, very wrong. And if my classmates found out, there's no mistake I would surely be bullied again. It was that kind of thing. So when Sensei said it was all right to keep it a secret, I felt very grateful to Sensei. No matter what kind of strange things he might have wanted in return, I've been bullied for a very long time. For now, I'm happy that I'm no longer being picked on, but that's only because my class has found someone else more worthy of bullying than me. And so I thought any kind of compensation would have been easier than returning to being the scapegoat once again. Because the role of the scapegoat was a painful one. And so, from the beginning, I was willing to endure whatever he wanted. If I were to compare it to the sorrow and fear of being bullied in class, listening to Sensei's words weren't hard at all. Aside from calling for me after school, it's not like Sensei ever teases me. Instead, he goes so far as to punish the classmates who do tease me. Yes, even though Sensei forced me to disgrace myself, he was protecting me. And so, in return for protecting me, I've begun to think it's my duty to give Sensei whatever he wants, and I endure it. Feeling guilty about what Sensei wants is my problem, while Sensei himself is always very satisfied with them, and even compliments me. So, I've come to endure it, thinking that what I'm doing is good. But I don't know how to stop his desires. The deeds I should have offered up in gratitude to Sensei for protecting me are now becoming an obligation I must perform for him. The occasional after-school relationship gradually began to corrode into other times as well. He'll do things like order me to feign illness so he can take me away during class, or order me to come to school on days off. Until now, school life had been secondary. Now, when Sensei wants me on weekdays and weekends, I must do his bidding, and it's exhausting me. Why am I so dedicated to doing these things? These toils that I've come to endure to protect my tranquil school life, as they begin to violate that very tranquility. I'm starting to believe they no longer serve their purpose. However, there's no doubt Sensei helped protect me from those bullies. Like today, a bunch of boys who wanted to pull a prank with my textbook were all lined up out in the hall for me, and he smacked them with an open palm until they were red all over. He even made them apologize to me. So, I can't think of Sensei as a bad person. Rather, Sensei is a good teacher who helps protect me from the bullies. And so, heeding Sensei's desires is the natural way of showing my gratitude for that. On the other hand, feeling uncomfortable means that I'm starting to lose that appreciation. Is Sensei a good person? Or a bad person? I don't know it. I don't know that anymore. Just today, I did exactly as he said. Sensei ordered me to put on a backpack while in my underwear. His order seemed as if he wanted me to thank him for his day's work. And it hurt because I didn't feel thankful. If Sensei didn't protect me, I would probably be bullied in class right now. Compared to that, this is okay. Even though I thought that way, I couldn't stop myself from continuing to cry and sob. Meso. With only the victims' names revealed, the injustice of leaving the culprit's name undisclosed is something only done in newspapers. So here the name of the man who forced Marie Moria's unreasonable destiny upon her shall be revealed. Just as divulged in the girl's monologue, this man is Marie's homeroom teacher. His name is Yoshihito Kanamori. Young with a slender figure, even in his calm composure, he hadn't lost his humor. He was a popular teacher who many girls longed for, but that was just a matter of his appearance. On the inside, he crushed the meager desires of these girls underfoot, and he had plenty of them. He was the worst. He once had his sights on a sacred position and might have been a virtuous man. But the pressure of the real world dispersed his unrealistic dreams. Before long, coupled with the pressure of work and unrewarding days, he began to embrace an irrational anger. Even though he selflessly devoted himself to his work, no one was grateful to him for it. All he had was the trickling of his own meaningless sweat. And yet, there were a lot of people in this world who would stand on his shoulders and sip that delicious sweat. He was already seeing his efforts being rewarded and continued to pile up his hard work. But on the other hand, during times when no one rewarded him, he had to reward himself. Because if he thought about his work up until now, this kind of deviation was justified. And so, he began to reinforce his selfish reasoning. And that could only be his unconscious rage. If he hadn't found an outlet for that rage in another person, he might have continued to be a noble teacher. But he found that person. Not only that, she was also one of his own students. So from that point onward, his life lost its purity, and he unmistakably became the worst kind of man. His purpose now when he came to school was not to educate the next generation of girls and boys to bear the future of society, but to amuse his unrequited self by consciously violating the girl to his heart's content. And that was just the starting point of Kanamori's conscious sins. He had a weakness. No matter how much he suppressed it, his desire could not be contained from unleashing his pleasure. And that pleasure didn't need long to take the guilt away from him. The listless morning staff meeting knew no end and went on and on. Complaints from parents about the quality and differences in each class's report cards. Complaints about the harsh rule of not being able to use towels at the school's pool due to the spread of skin disease. Until as recently as last year, there was an insistent and tenaciously repetitious vice principal, who put on airs and obsessively went around making declarations as if he owned the staff room. During those times, my heart wanted the school day to quickly end, so I could call Marie to the usual former school building bathroom, and then I could greatly satisfy my twisted fantasies, because she could become whatever kind of outlet I desired. The pool opening began, and the school-appointed dark blue swimsuits became dazzling miracles. I think I'm just about tired of the underwear and backpack combination. Perhaps this time I'll make her wear that backpack with a school swimsuit. No doubt it'll be a laughably stupid look for her like no one has ever seen. If I made her prepare for it, even that kind of ridiculous outfit could become a reality the next day. And the girl who would never refuse anyone would indulge in my fantasies. To control one girl with just this kind of criminal conduct, I was able to imagine myself as having reached a complete level beyond anyone else in this staff room. Plenty of different philosophies have questioned how humans could evaluate themselves. How could I elevate myself as a human? How could I be at ease without being looked down upon by others? These were things I had worried about in my younger days. But the solution tumbled right under my nose. To control someone and to stand above them. By only doing just that, I was able to conquer a complex that had vexed me since childhood. Not only that, I didn't feel like I was being looked down upon. On the contrary, when no students were around, I was immersed in the superiority I felt over my chit-chatting coworkers. But at the same time, as for those fears that should have completely disappeared, I was aware that some stayed in my mind. For today, tomorrow, and even the day after that, I'll probably continue to do as I please to that girl to my heart's content. And yet, for it to continue into next year, the year after that, and even 10 years from now is impossible. Marie Moria, not unlike other students, would soon change schools, graduate. The world she surrounds herself with will change, and before I know it, a time may come when she'll be beyond my control. At that time, it could be better if we could end it cleanly, like an estranged couple's sudden breakup, but expecting that was foolish. What I've come to force Marie to do is a completely excuseless crime. The girl who wants to be released from me always swears that she'll never tell anyone. But that's only while she's under my control and has nowhere to run. If her circumstances change, there's no doubt she'll immediately change that and report me to the police. For instance, how much longer can she remain obedient? People don't submit to the very depths of their souls. Until that day comes when they are released, they can only look to lessen their oppression. Someday, Marie Moria will surely betray me. With that in mind, how could I keep this going for even just one more heart-melting day? And when faced with the end of those days, how could they end peacefully? I began to ponder. The first thing I thought of was how I could extend my power over her after she graduated. How could I control her forever without betrayal? And it's not like our bodies can last forever either. If that's the case, assuming these days have to end, I must think of a way to make them end as quietly as possible. But what resolution would be a clean ending? Since there's no guarantee she would ever betray me, how could I end this so I could trust her not to stab me in the back? After following this chain of logic, the resulting solution was exceedingly simple. This answer was overflowing in countless movies, television programs, and the like, and so it instantly came to mind. From this point forward, in my mind, unknowingly the idea began to bloom that Marie Moria must be killed. At least for now, Marie's obedient. Having discord in her domestic environment, being unable to consult her family, and being a bullied child from the beginning, she has no friends to ask for help in class. Therefore, it's while she's obedient that I should put her away. I came to realize I had in the palm of my hand a moist and detestable sweat. Yes, this was the price. The price for the unforgivable sin of violating one girl as the outlet of my desires. But the way to pay that price was through another sin, and my pile of sins reaches the height of inhumanity. But there are plenty of guys that are worse than I am. Until today, no, even after today, I'll continue to devote myself, and I'll uphold my noble teaching profession better than anyone else. I'll energetically handle teaching homeroom, and as for club advisement and trouble with parents and the like, if someone complains, I'll handle everything and continue on without reward. After all, if I think of all that I've achieved so far, putting aside a crime to this degree, I still can't be considered a bad guy. In this world, the guys who have done well can do as they want, and guys who can't end up always getting used until they drop dead. That's just it. Am I not just teaching the girl who aptly fits my reasoning, Marie Moria, that special lesson? And the guys who don't notice can only spend their lives being controlled by someone. It's natural for them to continue being exploited. Anyway, Marie is still obedient. I'm always calling her to the old school building's restroom unnoticed. Perhaps I could change where we meet. I wonder if there might be a way to ask her to go somewhere unnoticed, where there'd be no evidence, and absolutely without exposing myself, finally kill her. I'll think it over. I have to come up with a foolproof plan. Although it's not as though I have to rush my plan out by today or tomorrow, because at least for today, and the days after, Marie should have no way to escape from my control. What kind of pleasure shall I indulge in today? Again, I allowed my mind to fill with perverted fantasies. And until the long speech by the vice principal ended at first bell, for a long time those fantasies continued. They say Mesomeso-san came out. They said they heard it crying Mesomeso. This is the land of the school's children, and as it can only be entered by children, often strange superstitions spread among them. When walking through the halls, I suddenly heard that. Recently, I've heard that name around as if it were a new school ghost. A school yokai is just that. For example, if the science room skeleton starts to dance in the middle of the night, or if someone sees the moving eyes of the music room's Beethoven statue. Schools everywhere have them, and without a better alternative, they are often introduced in school ghost stories. There are also stories like the school's 7 mysteries. I don't really know what kind of yokai make up the 7 mysteries at this school, but at any rate, it seems like I've just heard about them. It looks like the children are talking about a yokai called Mesomeso-san, and its name implies, it seems like it's a yokai that cries Mesomeso. It was a truly childish and simplistic name. When I moved to hurry past them with that thought of how stupid it was, I stopped suddenly in my tracks, because then I heard them say this. Yeah, that Mesomeso-san, right? Apparently it comes out of the old school building's girls' bathroom. And then, inside the stall, it cries Mesomeso. If you think it might be someone crying and knock on the door, you'll start to hear it from inside. Mesomeso, Mesomeso. You out there, please listen to my pitiful story. Without knowing it, a shiver began to creep up my spine. The Mesomeso-san the students were talking about wasn't a yokai or anything of the sort, because it might have really existed. In the old school building's restroom, someone had been crying, and when someone asked what was wrong, they answered, "Please listen to my pitiful story." I swallowed hard, and I felt as if needles of ice were driving me to desperation. That wasn't some kind of yokai. Marie. It must have been Marie Moria. If someone were to see us together there, we might be under some futile suspicion. Like always, after we'd end our after-school rendezvous, I'd leave first, and she would probably leave sometime afterwards. Basically, after I leave, Marie is left alone in the toilet stall. From there, on some off chance a student or someone went and entered the old school building, if they went to hear the girl crying inside the stall, Marie would doubtlessly want to tell them her story. Even so, the student who went there must have thought it was a yokai and run away. That is, quite a coincidence, or perhaps a miracle. without knowing it, I have avoided a deadly crisis. If that student hadn't thought it was a yokai and had lent an ear to Marie's story, there's no doubt that right about now I'd be in a jail cell. But even with that miraculous coincidence, I couldn't stop my cold sweat. Right. But they say if you listen to Mesomeso-san, you must not speak to it. Well, if you do speak to Mesomeso-san, and if you see its true form after opening the door, I've heard then it gets gruesome. Gruesome? They say you'll be dragged into the stall, and after breaking every bone in your body, it will kill you. And so they say, don't speak with it, and don't look at it. Scary, scary, scary! Yeah, but people don't normally go to the old building bathrooms, so this is just a good story to get people to go near Mesomeso-san's stall, isn't it? They'd say, you better not go there, don't go there. But then obviously they'll go, and if Mesomeso-san was really there in that stall, now that would be scary. Without thinking, I was barely able to contain myself from bursting into laughter while listening to that conversation. Someone who had heard Marie Moria's cries made a ghost story. Up until that point, this had been a dangerous miscalculation. But I would have never in my dreams imagined for them to advise against going near that stall. Marie's cries that wanted salvation ironically backfired and drove students away from her. The girls are superstitious, and naturally they wouldn't imitate this sort of transgression. On the other hand, the boys will really like this idea. However, no matter what kind of reason they might have had, the girls' bathroom is such a forbidden place for prepubescent boys that if they were to set foot in it, they would be accosted for it. In other words, Mesomeso-san's ghost story, now more than ever, has driven people away from that bathroom. No, that's probably too optimistic. While almost all of the students might be scared by the ghost story, the school is just too big. There must be at least one student who isn't afraid. And speaking of that person, if he were to tell the students our secret, it would mean my ruin. I must have realized the strain of the situation coming back once again. I told Marie to come to the usual old school building's bathroom after school today as well. And lastly, it might be best if I monitor the situation a bit. I should at least take the time to see what kind of blind spots exist in the halls that cross the old school building's bathroom. If I'm really, really discreet, today should be my farewell rendezvous with Marie. And yet, my stupid male nature, I intended to make Marie my slave. In reality, I'm becoming hers. Every day is already unbearably painful for me, so forcing Marie to help heal that pain at the end of each day had come to the point where I was unable to resist even a single day without her. Although I make Marie call me her master like a pet, in reality, I was the one being mastered. For Marie, a day I didn't call for her was probably a day of rest. But for me, because I didn't summon her, I would suffer that day from a pain that went unhealed. And so, while feeling a pressing conscience to not invite her to that bathroom, I also held the contradiction that I didn't want to cancel today's invitation. How will I violate her today? That occupied my thoughts since this morning. If I were to postpone it, there would be no doubt what would happen to my mind. And so, aware of the dangers, I called upon Marie again today. Before long, I won't be able to call her up anymore, so I'll absolutely enjoy her to my heart's content, and I'll make today last forever. Forever and ever. Ah, Marie, Marie! I love you. You and your body, even to the point of madness. I'm in love with all of it. Marie. Of course, Mesomeso-san's story even reached Marie's ears. Mesomeso-san's story had become the hot topic for the rumor-loving girls of Marie's Class 8. How creepy. I don't go to the old school bathroom's toilet, but now I really don't want to use it. But it's scary. Even if it wasn't in the old school building, if I were to knock on a closed stall door, and from the inside hear Meso-Meso, I'd freak out. What would you do? Let's say you knocked, and it said something like, Meso-Meso, you there, listen to my pitiful story. No! Run away, run away! Just by replying like that, it would probably kill you by crushing every bone in your body, right? No. While listening to this, Marie was feeling sad. Why doesn't anyone listen to the sorrows of the person inside? Marie also realized that it was probably about her. She didn't remember it well, but earlier, she was forced to do something horrible that she had never done before. It was hard for her, painful, and after she had been released, she couldn't hold back the tears. At that time, someone came to the bathroom. She wanted them to help save her from her terrible sadness, and she had a feeling that she had said something like that. And so, like it said in that ghost story, that someone on the other side of the door ran away. And that incident suddenly became a ghost story, and she was also suddenly made out to be a yokai called Mesomeso-san. Even if she wanted to be saved by someone, if they asked to hear her story, they would be killed by having all the bones in their bodies crushed, so no one would dare ask. It was sad, having her sole act of courage turned into the work of a yokai by someone's story left her feeling downhearted. But she thought being a yokai might not have been bad. Because she didn't know when those nightmarish days would end, Marie's heart had already become like ash. Recently, while waiting for the apartment elevator, she looked down below her, and despite being on the 8th floor, she had a pleasant feeling that the vast asphalt must have been very soft. For someone without family, school, and a place in the world, who no longer knew what tomorrow would bring, could the asphalt truly and kindly bring it all to an end? And so she thought. But death is just a simple escape. Naturally, admitting defeat couldn't settle it. If I do, then at least I want revenge against that teacher who toys with me. And yet in my weakness, what can I do to hurt him? I know that all of what Sensei forces me to do is wrong. If I have the resolve to destroy myself, I can expose everything, and I'll surely take Sensei down with me. Sensei recorded home videos of the many acts he forced me to do for him, and he said if I betrayed him, he'd distribute them. If I have the resolve to ruin myself, I can take Sensei along with me. But after ruining myself, probably even just by being alive, many painful days of shame would await me. Between that kind of horror and my desire for revenge, I thought plenty about both results. If I can't escape no matter how I try, all that's left is suicide. But if there's another way, I don't want to die. Can't I have my revenge without dying? There's no way such a convenient method could exist. If I want to live without any sort of revenge, then today after school, at the appointed time, I have no choice but to go wait for Sensei in that bathroom. Then I thought, I really should become the yokai Mesomeso-san then. Mesomeso-san is a terrifying yokai, and it's said that it drags in its victims and kills them by crushing all their bones with its horrific power. If I could attain that power, then surely, I could even have my revenge on that man. That man always treats me like chewing gum. He chews, and chews until the flavor is gone, and finally he spits me out and throws me away. He puts on his clothes, tells me to go home, and he leaves me. But if I had Mesomeso-san's power, then I would also chew, chew, chew. And after I ground his bones into dust, I'd spit him out. And so, I wanted to become a yokai and cease being human. And to stop being human, isn't that much different than killing myself? But it wasn't that I simply wanted to stop being human. There was a big difference because I wanted to be reborn into something else to take my revenge. Lately, I've come to understand that's all that's left for me. School illustrates life. For humans who are bullied in school, even after they enter society, things don't change. They just take on the same role again. While in school, humans who can't break away from the bullies become unable to escape them for the rest of their lives. And I'm a human who can't break free. Because even if I were to continue living like this, nothing good would come of it. Even if I entered society, I'd be captured by another man like Sensei, and I'd be fated to return to those days once again, unable to break free. While I understood that much, I didn't have the courage to simply choose death. After all, becoming a yokai, wanting revenge and the like, those were strange ideas and I couldn't tell if they were positive or negative. I wonder, could I become Mesomeso-san? I wonder, could I join the ranks of the school yokai? I was truly the Mesomeso-san that everyone was gossiping about. But I wasn't like that yokai everyone was talking about. Even though I'm Mesomeso-san, I wonder, how could I really become Mesomeso-san? As Marie idly wondered that question, she absent-mindedly wasted time in the library while waiting for the appointed time after school. She must have been talking to herself in a whisper. Even if there were people listening, her voice must have been too quiet to warrant asking if she had said something. Even so, since that whisper received a reply, Marie couldn't help but be surprised. So you're saying, you're Mesomeso-san? Eh? Suddenly, there was a girl in front of Marie. Of course, the girl was someone Marie didn't know. There were more than 10 classes for each grade in this mammoth school. Exchanges and transfers of students were common. Even if they were in the same grade, there were many children she didn't know. This girl looked very refined, that is to say, extravagant. As if she were at a piano recital, the girl had a pristine and elegant figure. She looked like a doll wearing a beautiful dress that had turned into a human being. Of course, the same could be said for her face and hair. It was obvious that properly maintaining them must have taken a lot of time. But even the look in her eyes was like a doll's. They were very beautiful, like jewels. Even so, she couldn't sense warm blood flowing through them. Her hair and outfit, among other things, could be complimented for being doll-like. But as for her eyes, saying they were doll-like might not have been a compliment. By the look in this girl's eyes, Marie was left with that kind of impression. Could this girl be in the same grade, or in a grade above? If the girl were an upperclassman, Marie had to watch her language. Because Marie at least wanted to know what grade she was in, she looked at the name tag of the girl in front of her. But it couldn't be made out, as if the name tag had been blotted out by the rain. Never mind my name tag. I want to see yours. Show it to me? Eh? Oh, I'm sorry. Marie's arm had hidden her name tag, so the girl hadn't been able to see it. And since she had been caught peeking at her name tag, Marie hurried to show her own. A kid from class 8, huh? This school has so many students, so I can't really say I'm familiar with that class. The girl seemed satisfied to know that Marie was a student in class 8. But for Marie, the girl's name tag was obscured and she couldn't read it well. Despite the girl's elegant clothing with her school regulation name tag in an unmissable spot, Marie felt a strange humor to it all. Marie strained her eyes as best she could and read only the class, but something was strange about that too. Because she had read Class B. Even though there shouldn't be any classes named alphabetically, the name tag had this school's format. Thinking it would be rude to stare anymore beyond that, Marie stopped looking at her name tag. Marie Moria-san? The names of children these days are getting harder to read. But they can't beat my name. Call me Higanbana, alright? Nice to meet you, Marie. Yes. Very nice to meet you. A girl called Higanbana, but could it be her first name or last name? Marie couldn't decide. But as far as talking to her one-on-one, there is no need to call her by her first name. Marie also thought there was probably no need to pointlessly remember that name. And then the girl named Higanbana giggled. It might have been because she saw through Marie's doubts about her name. Thinking there was no way she could have sensed something like that, Marie shivered ever so slightly. Well, about what you just said. Are you Mesomeso-san? Or not? That's... Marie didn't really know what would be the correct reply. After all, because she was the cause of the ghost story, with that in mind, there was no doubt she was Mesomeso-san. But Marie wasn't like the yokai the students were spreading rumors about. And so Marie, not knowing how best to respond, must have been perplexed for a time. Higanbana giggled, watching Marie's bewilderment. It was as if she understood even without Marie saying a word. There are a lot of children gathered here at a school this big. Did you know? Yokai gather the hearts of people. So if there's a school with this many students crowding about, then more yokai would gather here than a normal school. You know, don't you? The school's 7 mysteries. The 7 yokai that reside in the school. Having 7 seats would have been plenty for a normal school, but for a school this big, don't you think there'd be room for more than 7? So there's been talk about increasing the number of seats for yokai in this school. Fittingly, there's been talk about a yokai called Mesomeso-san. I've been searching, thinking what kind of child it could be. But I'm surprised, now that I finally found it, to think it was a human. But I'm not a yokai. But you're Mesomeso-san, right? I don't think it matters that you're human. Among the 7 mysteries, it seems there are also former humans as well. I'm different, however. As if she were a beautiful doll surrounded by elegant furniture, Higanbana laughed with a giggle. And yet, at the same time with the eeriness of a doll that shouldn't move, she giggled. Marie certainly wasn't in a dream world, but she knew. There was no doubt that Higanbana wasn't human, and she had come to choose a suitable new companion, the new yokai, Mesomeso-san. There was no doubt. Higanbana-san? Are you a yokai? Yeah. In class, I'm called the Dancing Higanbana, the 3rd rank of the 7 seats. Once in a while, I'm mentioned by a nurse as well, a doll that for some reason had been left in the infirmary. Have you heard the tale about it dancing alone in the depth of the night? I'm sorry. I don't really know that story. Oh, I see. Well, thanks for humoring me. That was the first time Higanbana's expression dimmed as she frowned. It seemed that having Marie not know her name made Higanbana uncomfortable. But looking at that expression, Marie finally realized that she could talk to her. What kind of person was this girl who introduced herself as one of the 7 mysteries? While it was different for her to understand, she didn't seem like a bad person. Higanbana-san? What have you come for? Is it to welcome Mesomeso-san as one of you? Marie timidly asked. Even though she was strange and called herself a yokai, for her to welcome Marie, who had no friends, into their fold truly made Marie feel a little happy. To become one of the yokai, that meant ending her life as a human. If so, would this yokai called Higanbana kill her outright with a spell? But that was just wishful thinking. If she didn't even have the courage to take her own life, the days of being that man's plaything would continue with that end. She thought it'd be much better to be killed with a spell right here, so she could be welcomed as one of Higanbana's kind. So you're prepared to give up being a human, then? Yes. Higanbana grinned, and she evaluated Marie by looking her over from the top of her head to the tips of her toes. Around this time, Marie had no doubt. Higanbana had the power to wordlessly read her mind. And after thinking it, Higanbana, as if to reply, "Of course," grinned once again. Well, there's no problem with the will to do it. How suitable. I'll recommend it at our class meeting that you join us as the 8th rank as Mesomeso-san. I think it'll probably be easily decided. After all, everyone's pleased with Mesomeso-san. Higanbana laughed as if she were in a good mood. But in a blink, even though Marie could still hear her laughter, Higanbana's figure disappeared. With another blink, this time her voice disappeared. And with a final blink, her very presence dissipated away. And so it happened before she could react. Marie frantically searched for Higanbana, but she didn't find her again. Since she disappeared, she understood that Higanbana wasn't human. She felt happiness knowing that she had been invited to be a part of that kind of existence. But since she disappeared, there was the terrifying thought that everything that happened just now might have all been a dream. Wanting to wipe that thought from her mind, she searches for Higanbana. But she can't find her. Because as much as she wanted the yokai's form across from her eyes, she couldn't be seen through human eyes. Was what just happened real? Or could it have been a desired escape in a momentary daydream? I, Marie, will believe in Higanbana's existence. There was no way that this vivid experience just now was an illusion. I will accept this invitation from the school yokai. By ending my humanity, I finally found a way to escape from my days of suffering. Surely I'll attain the power I need to take my revenge on Sensei if I rid myself of this human life. But I also understood that cursing someone digs 2 graves. If I'm not prepared to lose everything, I can't have my revenge. The resolution to cease being human. The resolution to throw away all of her life up until today. And when she realized that, there was a spark of emotion in Marie's heart. But before she could realize what that emotion was, the needle on the clock signaled that it was time for her to head to the old school building bathroom. And once again, she was expressionless. Returning to an expression paler than Higanbana's doll-like figure, she trudged towards the old school building. She wondered what kind of emotion it was that had set her heart on fire. That emotion's name, resolution. Or perhaps it was determination. She had told Higanbana that she was prepared to cease being human. After that, all she could do was wait for Mesomeso-san's existence to be recognized at the yokai school meeting. If I were recognized by them, I might be welcome to live as a yokai in the school. I'll likely lose my life, and I'll probably have to go through a rite of passage to end my life as a human. In other words, I will soon end my human life. If that's so, since I have nothing left to lose, wouldn't it be all right if I could try just one act of bravery while I've still got my human body? Marie headed for the old school building's bathroom with her head down. But in those clenched fists of hers, she held just a tiny bit of strength. Sensei, I'd like to speak with you. When Marie began to talk like that, Kanamori instinctively knew. His forbidden relationship with her wouldn't continue forever. The day will come when it will end somehow. And he knew that day had finally arrived. Because Marie wanted to end their relationship today, and as he heard her awkward tone, before he had finished listening, he understood everything. But in spite of knowing that a day like today would eventually arrive, he hadn't thought that it would actually be today. And Kanamori was considerably flustered. While he knew that this day would finally arrive, it was clear he hadn't thought of any way to stop it. Are you so sure you want to say that? Even though I have videos of you and I? Are you sure you want someone to see those embarrassing videos? I don't want someone to see them, but if someone does, then I think Sensei would be in trouble too. Although he had exhausted the utmost cruelty upon her, Kanamori was a teacher who cultivated a large number of students under his observing eye, and so, looking at Marie's expression, he was convinced. Marie had the courage to speak the words that would end it. Moreover, while putting it into words, she was gaining more and more courage in what she had to say. This was bad. The more he was trying to calm her down, the more stubborn she would get instead. But for Marie, who had been that shy and submissive, why did she suddenly have this much courage? It couldn't be. Had she told someone and asked for help? That would be the end of me. The risk of those days leading 2 lives? I should have known the risks more than anyone. But I had forgotten that riskiness by overindulging in those days of pleasure. I had presumed that by using a tape as blackmail, I could make her surrender. The recordings of the deeds I forced Marie to do naturally didn't just have meaning as insurance. They were the only thing that satisfied my own base desires. But, conveniently, it became a control to prevent betrayal from her. Tape recordings of the acts became a threat, one that was useful for Marie's particular stereotype. But those tape recordings that threatened her like a gigantic dominating fortress were quickly negated, and the shackles that now held Marie under my control were beginning to fade away from existence. Did you talk to someone or something about this? No, I still haven't told anyone. If you were to tell someone, Sensei would, that tape. I don't want that, but, well, if Sensei were to destroy those tapes, I wouldn't tell anyone. Kanamori felt slight relief. Marie still hadn't told anyone. My destruction hadn't arrived yet. It's still not too late. I could still find another way. Even though Marie is becoming stronger, those tape recordings were her Achilles' heel. After all, she was using them as an equal condition in exchange for not telling anyone. But even so, could Marie keep her mouth shut forever? It's fine now because she's still afraid of me. It's fine as long as she just thinks that we're on equal ground. But supposing she gets more courage, if she thought to turn me into the police, I have nothing to protect myself from that. In the blink of an eye, the police would arrest me, and they'd decide that her Achilles' heel, the tapes, wouldn't be distributed. First of all, whenever I threaten her, I always keep saying I'll broadcast the tapes. However much time will that really buy me? It's pointless. This isn't as simple as a hidden switchblade concealed in her pocket that would bring my ruin with a single strike. Compared to that, running to the police is far, far simpler. Thankfully, Marie believes that we're on equal ground for now. If she realized the overwhelming difference, that would quickly be the tiebreaker. In addition to that, none of my efforts could protect me. Basically, that balance is already being torn apart. It's just that Marie hasn't noticed it. Today she can deceive me by pretending to consent at this place, but tonight she might phone the police. It's too late because my control no longer reaches Marie. Yes, when she leaves my sight, it's over. It's not strange that she's already baring her fangs. Even so, Marie still hasn't entirely realized her circumstances. What a stupid brat! That kind of thick-headed stupidity was the capacity of this bullied child after all. To that kind of stupidity, stacked next to my great work until now, my prestigious high school, my prestigious university, and continuing on as a teacher, and before long, vice principal, and I, who would go on to become headmaster, as if she could even follow in my footsteps. I feel a mindless fury burning in my guts. Anyway, if I don't somehow settle this right here and now, I'll destroy myself even before tomorrow morning. Now, while Marie is in my sight like this. Now, while we're alone in this bathroom stall like this. Now, while we're alone in the abandoned former school building. I must do something. If it has come to that, the answer is too easy. And as soon as I had the answer in my mind, the act was carried out by my hands. The rest, a strange sight. My vision blurred, and I felt as if I was seeing the world beyond the raging water's surface. It wasn't just my vision. It was my hearing too, and even my sense of touch. As if under raging water, everything became sluggish and muffled. And from that river's edge, my hands dug in, crushing Marie's throat. And that was probably a memory from my childhood, a memory associated with chasing a carp by the brook with my bare hands. Just what were the dreams I had back then? I saw myself as the Prime Minister? I wanted to be an airline pilot? How come those dreams turned out like this? Like this, even though when I ran around chasing carp and crayfish by the brook were the best days of my life. While Marie had convulsions, she intensely stared into space even though nothing was in the air. All she could do was foam and drool from her mouth as she began to hang. That's right, stopping Marie's breathing, playing with and killing those carp and crayfish and the like. They all had this same kind of feeling. So basically, living creatures, humans, carp, and even crayfish. In the end, there's not much difference. No matter how much I strangled, it didn't happen. In order to crush her core of cores, I gave it every last ounce of strength in my body. And so, it happened. The resistance of the convulsing Marie, as if all of her anguish had melted away, slowly began to slacken. And in the end, she exhausted as if unable to support the weight of her own body. The hands that gripped Marie's neck felt the full weight of her body. Marie no longer moved, but it was obvious she was just pretending to stiffen in my hands. Because if I were to perchance loosen my grip, quickly let her go, she'd naturally abide the laws of gravity and tumble to the ground. Marie, with her back to the wall, using the friction of the wall as if to show one final act of resistance, at last crouched to the ground. That was completely different than falling into a seated position. A person tends to sit so that their clothes aren't in disarray, but from the way Marie sat, I couldn't sense that at all. Her clothes were in disarray, and her skirt was immodestly inside out. Without even acting to fix her embarrassing state one bit, there sat Marie. No, the word sat no longer fit. It was there that Marie had died. The sudden realization that he had committed murder began to nauseate him. But that wasn't horror and self-repulsion. As for what it was that. Like vigorously opening a bag of peanuts and spilling the contents all over the carpet. While looking at that horrible spectacle, he seemed to grumble as if to say, "How annoying." Yes, it was particularly bothersome. I'd already went and killed her. There was no point in regretting it now. That said, I don't need to regret it. Marie's dead, and if I'm still living, from now on I can live my life without shame. And for that reason, I have to hide Marie's corpse. But where? I can't think of anything right now. But if I can reclaim my composure, I'll be able to think about it as long as I like. And because it's not like I stabbed her with a knife, leaving any trace that stand out. It's also already late after school. The students have all disappeared. Since I'm a teacher and I'm busy with my own work, what goes on in the school holds no interest for me. Much less a murder in the old school building bathroom, because there's no way someone would suspect me of hiding the body somewhere. By then I finally realized I was taking deep breaths. Perhaps it seemed I wasn't as cold-blooded as I thought I was. Relax. There's no need to worry. Relax. Relax. At that moment, from the far side of the hall, I heard someone's footsteps drawing near. Because of the peculiar way they were walking, it was probably one of the students. But in the old school building at this hour? And even then, what kind of business did they have with this bathroom? That's right. It's certainly been rumored the yokai called Mesomeso-san comes out of this bathroom. Most of the superstitious students won't go near it, but there's also curiosity among them. As much as one might threaten them not to go near a place, sure enough there'll be at least one particularly curious bastard who will go there. The sounds of those footsteps weren't coming at a brisk pace. I could tell it was someone walking very carefully and slowly, step by step. And I could even tell they were holding their breath. Because I had clearly imagined this already. In order to put those rumors of that so-called yokai who comes from this stall, Mesomeso-san, to the test, the time for that one person seeking to test their courage has finally come. If it is this student, will they come into this bathroom? Marie's corpse and I are in this bathroom stall, and the door is closed. So, if they entered the bathroom, they'd instantly know that someone was in a bathroom stall. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. If by chance they see Marie's body, or if someone knows I'm here at this time, I'm screwed. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? My whole body burst out in a cold sweat. For myself, who didn't shed a single drop of sweat when killing Marie in cold blood, just a single gutsy student who showed up by chance, that alone drove me into a panic. And even as I was panicking, the steps had steadily drawn closer to the bathroom. And now they had arrived. Those footsteps stopped at the entrance to the bathroom. Knowing that the stall's door was closed, I gulped. And maybe just by seeing it was closed, maybe it was truly empty at any rate. In order to confirm that, though, slowly, it stepped into the bathroom. Slowly. Closer. What should I do? What should I do? Slowly closer. Closer still. Please go back the way you came. Please. Go back the way you came. Closer and closer. Closer and closer. With seconds feeling like hours, time froze. And then, a knock. They hit it! They knocked! A knock was a confirmation if someone was inside or not. If an answer doesn't come from in here, maybe they'll wonder why no one is inside and climb up to peek from above. Or easier yet, they'd squat down and peek through the hole under the door. Either way, they'll realize the strangeness of there being more than one person inside. Then, if I don't return the knock... Knock! But if I do that, won't they just be interested that someone's inside? This is bad, this is bad, this is bad! I have no choice but to be seen, to show myself. Damn it! If I don't go out that door, then I'll also have to silence this stupid gutsy student and send him after Marie. But two would be bad, and even though one might be tough, and if I kill two more, I have no confidence I could get away with it. And this brat's friends might even be waiting outside for them to get back. Whoa! A scream that couldn't have come from my mouth filled my chest, and in my emptied mind, it made me feel as if a firework had sparked in the pure white mist. As if I were no longer myself, I felt I had escaped reality. And when faced with a do-or-die situation, bold words even I couldn't imagine spilled from my mouth. Meso. That was Mesomeso-san's line. From the other side of the door, I certainly heard a primary schoolgirl scream with a hee that took her breath away. Meso. You there. Please listen to my pitiful story. Pitifully. And I spoke while imagining as if Mesomeso-san, No, as if Marie had said it, feebly with a high pitch. The other side of the door was silent. Perhaps this third-rate performance wasn't enough? As my impatience grew, the silence from the other side of the door was broken. It's... That was undoubtedly the primary schoolgirl's scream. The words, "It's here," are commonly used when encountering a ghost. In other words, the girl who sought to test her courage believed she encountered Mesomeso-san. As if she had forgotten the discretion from when she came, the noise of loud footsteps began to head far off in the distance. I did it! The instant I completely exhausted my wild laughter, and the instant I believed my enemy had been repelled, I acted with lightning speed. I picked up Marie's body and flew out of there, because soon a crowd might rush into this bathroom. It wasn't just one person testing their courage. Perhaps by losing a game of rock, paper, scissors, she was made to come here as punishment. So if her companions hear "it's here," they'll probably all rush in here at once. While holding Marie, I turned back to the stall. Like looking at the seats after getting out of a late-night taxi, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. It's fine. Nothing. There should be no traces of any kind. Now quick. This place won't be safe for long. Diving into the first empty classroom before the restrooms, hiding Marie's body in the shadow of a platform, I also tried to conceal my breathing. As I predicted, around 4 girls made an uproar while running through the halls. Should I suddenly reveal myself and go scold these girls for running through the halls? No, that kind of pointless act wasn't necessary. Staying here for now and hiding my breath is a much better plan. Finally, while arguing with whether the girl really saw it or not, those 4 bustling girls in their excitement began to turn back. And for a little while after that, I held my breath. And when I was sure the old school building had returned to complete silence, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The area had already begun to get fairly dark. I had used an abandoned storehouse to temporarily store Marie's body. And after returning to the staff room, I pretended to finish work as I waited for nightfall. Since in recent years this school implemented an automatic security system, there was no night guard. And so, if I waited until the middle of the night, there'd be no one there. Speaking of the security system and the like, may have given the impression of rigorous surveillance with security cameras and whatnot, but it's nothing that extreme. There are just sensors placed all over the school's doors and windows, checking to make sure they're not broken into. Furthermore, they only work after the last person to leave turns them on. And so basically, if I waited long enough, it became my chance to be completely alone in the school. So, with the school completely empty under the darkness of the late night, I dragged Marie's body from the storehouse and took her to an outhouse behind the prefab school building. This toilet was the fairly old squatting kind, where the waste had to be pumped out from a gigantic septic tank buried underground. Originally, the drainage system should have been changed, but at the same time this prefab was made, it seems they intended to quickly tear down the old school. But since it wasn't destroyed and was always being used, both flush toilets and squat toilets came to exist at the same time in this strange state of affairs. Someone just comes to empty the septic tank sometimes, but it's not like they completely empty its contents, much less peek at the bottom. And so, if I tossed her inside this septic tank, no one should notice. And it might be found someday, but that might be in the future after the body has turned into a skeleton. Covered in shit and eaten by maggots, what kind of trace could they find on those skeletal remains? The most they could think is that she accidentally fell in while playing. I uncovered the drainage pipe for the septic tank. For a moment I winced at the horrible hot stench. Phew! And then I shined a light on Marie's body with my flashlight and checked to make sure I didn't leave any suspicious marks. It looked all right. It's not as if she lost her shoes along the way and left them somewhere in the school. Suddenly, I noticed something was a little out of place. Where was her right sleeve button? The clothes Marie wore had decorative buttons on the sleeves. Looking at her, her right sleeve should have had one, but it wasn't there, and her arm lay bare. Maybe I dropped the button somewhere? No, maybe she didn't have one on today to begin with. Searching the school for a single button was impossible. Rather than worrying about that, I was aware that I had to immediately dispose of Marie's body, and I did so without hesitation. From within the deep and unusually large septic tank came an echo with a plop sound, and after that somewhat disagreeable sound, it too was replaced by the sound of the insects of the night, and disappeared. I returned the drainer's cover to the way it was before. It's fine. No one knows a thing. No one saw me. I thought as I walked briskly and returned to the staff room. If there was a teacher in the staff room who witnessed it, they could question me. And while this worst-case scenario filled my mind, it was impossible. The staff room was filled with silence, and aside from the annoying sound of the ticking hands of the wall clock, there was nothing there. After all, I had already checked that all the teachers aside from myself had left the school before I went and disposed of Marie. That was the natural thing to do. Huh? There wasn't any need to laugh, but I was exhilarated the annoying cleanup job was all over and felt like a fulfilling yet senseless laugh. But the cause of my laughter wasn't just that alone. That's right. My quick thinking back in that bathroom. When that girl testing her nerve came and knocked, I thought it was over. But then, pretending to be that Mesomeso-san I had heard about was beyond amazing. That girl will probably spread the news to the people she meets every day starting tomorrow that she met Mesomeso-san. And then this school will certainly say that a yokai named Mesomeso-san exists and a legend will be born. That means basically, I was Mesomeso-san. That's right. Leaving no evidence, I accomplished murder and escaped unseen. That meant that I stood above humans in the hierarchical pyramid. In other words, I passed my test as a killer, and now I have surpassed the so-called human stage. And what I learned was the name Mesomeso-san. Yes, I have surpassed human beings. I have become Mesomeso-san. I have become a yokai. I am beyond humans. I murder humans, and I am feared by them. And even if I am destroyed, the ghost story of Mesomeso-san I will leave behind me will live on in the stories spoken by the students in this school forever. That was as if I had even transcended my inescapable predestined human lifespan. I'm Mesomeso-san! Students dread me, fear me, and transmit me with your stories. How superb! Oh, Marie. When you were alive, you sacrificed your body to relieve my boredom. And in the end, you even sacrificed your life to graduate me from humanity! What a swell kid! Oh. Mesomeso. Mesomeso. If someone were there to hear it, they would have heard a sad wail as if someone's heart had been torn to pieces. And it could be heard coming from behind the outhouse, where Marie's body had been disposed. Of course, it was a sorrowful cry because there was no one to hear it. No, it was a voice that couldn't forgive that there was no one there. Marie's body was now in a vat of filth where light would never shine again. However, her soul had been released and sat down across the vat's lid. What was it that made Marie sad now? Even Marie herself didn't know. It made her sad nonetheless. She had hoped she would have been given her life, only to have been given this sad fate. To be killed without having known anyone in the end, with her corpse tossed in this filthy place, no one would even know about her death. Nonetheless, the feeling the perpetrator felt in the end for her despite the many acts she had obediently followed wasn't even regret or even gratitude, but simply ridicule alone. All of these things tormented Marie. For her, eternity would continue her sorrow forever. Suddenly, the insects were silent, as if telling her someone had finally come. That was someone like she was now, whose existence was a human. And Marie, who existed no longer as a human, had already sensed that someone and raised her head. It was Higanbana. Before, her face didn't betray any emotions, but now she held an expression that fit the true meaning of the word emotionless. Whatever emotion it was, if one were to think it might have hurt Marie's feelings, to Marie, Higanbana's cold, emotionless, expressionless form might have been the kindest. Marie might not have yet understood, but this kindness to the dead might have been a non-human formality. My condolences. If you think crying will heal your sorrow, feel free to cry. As long as you understand that those cries can no longer reach anyone's ears, that is. I thought so. It's like that, isn't it? It would be strange to hear the voice of a ghost, wouldn't it? Higanbana's words might have been harsh, but for Marie, who didn't know the logic of spirits, those words might have been necessary, and perhaps it might have been a kindness to Marie. A cry is a sign that someone is looking for help, because until someone hears them, that person will continue crying. And for ghosts whose voices can reach no one without realizing it, they continue crying eternally, forever and ever. And when they are reduced to a spirit that cries only for crying's sake, they become seedy spirits who just want their cries to be heard by the living. And because she knew what it was like to be reduced to that sort of existence, for Higanbana, knowing she had to use strict words with Marie, she had to tell her now while she still had ears that could listen. Higanbana-san? With this I'll be able to become Mesomeso-san, won't I? Higanbana is fine, Marie. And with that, Higanbana paused and stayed silent for a time. During that silence, Marie had a feeling something was wrong. If she was going to let her be Mesomeso-san, then she should say so without hesitation. And yet, she didn't say those words. Before you label me as a liar, please listen to me. It's true that I recommended you to be Mesomeso-san. Everyone at the school class meeting gave their approval. They had only one condition. That condition wouldn't have been a problem at that time, but now that condition is stuck in place. A condition? What is it, Higanbana-san? Only one person is allowed to hope to become Mesomeso-san, you see. Eh? Not understanding what Higanbana was talking about, Marie's mouth opened in surprise. But could that be what she was saying? That there was no way of changing her hopeless situation? Her expression began to fill with sadness. When the seat for the school yokai called Mesomeso-san was recognized, the one who fit the position was Marie alone. Because I went to where you were, I confirmed that you had the will. And since you had the will, and because you alone had the intent, at that time there was no problem for you to become Mesomeso-san. Nevertheless, at the very last moment, a problem developed. What was the problem? A person aside from you has appeared who hopes to become Mesomeso-san. Eh? Because you were here crying with all your might, you didn't hear his voice, right? That man with the wicked laughter in his loud voice even reached our class with that cry. That was a very ironic twist of fate, because to tell you the truth, his voice might have been more intense than your sadness. You know, the man who killed you, that Kanamori, he went and declared he would become Mesomeso-san. How? How did Sensei? Right after he killed you. To drive away students that arrived there, Kanamori faked being Mesomeso-san. That turned out splendidly. Being extremely pleased with himself, he believed himself Mesomeso-san. So he just declared it with a yell. I thought such a wicked voice would reach your ears, but because you were busy crying, you didn't hear it, right? For a time, Marie was dumbfounded. She had been violated by that man while she was alive, and even after taking her life, he sneered majestically down on her. And not only that, did he have to snatch away even her life after death? Even in death, can't she free herself from that man's control? It can't be. For a time, all Marie could do was hide her face as she continued to shed her tears of sorrow. There's no need to despair, Marie. There are just two candidates for Mesomeso-san, you and Kanamori. It's already been decided Mesomeso-san will be taking the 8th rank among the school yokai. So now it can't be left empty. Either you or Kanamori, one of you will certainly take that seat. Your odds are 50%, so it's a sure thing, right? How is it? And when will it be decided? A poll at the school meeting. We 7 can vote at the school meeting. We're an odd number, so it will surely be decided. Because I'm attached to you, I intend to vote for you. But in our class, there are a lot with wicked natures. It seems there are some among us who think an evil bastard like Kanamori would be suitable for number 8. Indeed, they might have a point. Oh no. Well, if I should lose that poll, what will happen to me? There's no place where as any ripe souls gather other than a school. There is no other place in all Japan where as many evil spirits gather just to feast on the leftovers of those souls. You probably can't perceive them yet, but even this area around this mammoth school is a well-known yokai gold mine. For someone like you, since they have no respect or control, those ill-natured guys wouldn't pass up an awfully juicy soul like yours. In an instant, they'd rush you and devour you until they've sucked out your bone marrow. Can't you imagine it? In that school building's shadow, or on the other side of the thicket. I've heard those bad ones with quite an appetite have formed groups. Marie was startled, and while she saw what Higanbana was saying, she didn't see anything slip out from the night's darkness. But even without seeing them, she was certain those wicked beings existed. You'll be all right for now. Your spirit is still being looked after by the one and only Higanbana. On school premises, there isn't a fool who would dare attack someone from that school in the care of a school yokai from the 7 seats. Not to mention, I teach them what cruelty is. Higanbana giggled with an eerie expression that was neither flattering nor trustworthy. That should have greatly frightened Marie, but Marie couldn't see it. She was more frightened of the things appraising her that hid in the veil of darkness. Who is more appropriate for the title of Mesomeso-san, you or Kanamori? Until that's decided, I'll guarantee your safety. But after that, I can't guarantee it, can I? It's all right. Even if you're eaten by those guys, or even if a Reaper comes along and your judgment is settled in Hades, either way will only last an instant. However, you might have wanted to exist along with your frail mind will be snatched away in an instant. Either way, see? Higanbana-san is only protecting my existence like this for now. Is that right? That's right! Although, after this, I don't know if it's safe to say. What is it? Higanbana, with a cruel smile, put her lips to Marie's ear, and as if to lick her earlobe, she spoke. There are many who think you look delicious. Not only just that group out there, but I do too, because I think if you don't become Mesomeso-san, before they can sink their teeth into you, I think I'll eat you first myself. What she said couldn't have been just a joke. Respecting mutual rights of others was logic from the human world. In the world of non-humans, rank was everything. Everything was survival of the fittest. And if Higanbana wanted that, those words told her that she could now, in this very moment, make it into reality. Thinking that there's nothing to be afraid of after death, that is human stupidity. Even after death, the world is still filled with things to be afraid of. And Marie, who had already once dived through the extremely cruel barrier of death, that reality where she could have lived without excessive cruelty, where she could have known no fear, never came. But Marie reined in her fears and spoke in a gentle voice. If it comes to that, then if Higanbana-san desires that, I think that would be all right. Have you already given up? That's not it. It would be ingratitude, because Higanbana-san is protecting me. I'm allowed to exist as I am now, aren't I? Because to Higanbana-san, who gave me time to cry for my own death. So I think I must be grateful for that. For Marie, Higanbana's reason for approaching her might have been just to kill and eat her. Even so, the warm words that offered to welcome her among Higanbana's kind was worthy of gratitude. Even Kanamori, who demanded compensation in the form of those immoral acts for protecting her from those bullies, had certainly never offered her to be his friend or companion. Even if Marie didn't put those emotions into words, Higanbana read them. Higanbana laughs, but Marie doesn't see her expression. If that happens, then your soul will be delicious. To be a suitable school yokai, you'll need a bit more wickedness and cruelty, you know. That's all right, because I said I wanted to take my revenge as I am now. I'm capable of that kind of cruelty. And with that revenge, if you don't become Mesomeso-san, you'll be in a tough spot, won't you? And even if you have your revenge, it might just be an inconvenience for that man, right? Marie once again began to cry. From that man's shadow who she couldn't even escape from in death, feeling sadness, bitterness, and rage. All she could do was jumble her various emotions. Even her wail of agony reached no one as it was swallowed by the veil of darkness. Marie, school yokai's expectations, and the like didn't matter one bit to the still living Kanamori. But even so, Kanamori hadn't yet completely cut all his connections to Marie's death. talk about Marie Moria not coming home last night quickly turned into an uproar. Was it an accident, or did she get involved in some trouble? The last anyone saw of the ever-lonely and friendless Marie was at school that day. As for what happened after school, it was anyone's guess. Police were looking for information and posting flyers with drawings of what Marie wore that day on bulletin boards here and there. Making sure not to overlook any witnesses, they posted them all around town. The police even came to question the homeroom teacher, Kanamori. Kanamori said he didn't know what happened after school, and the police departed feeling satisfied. It even became an urgent topic at the staff meeting, and as a precaution in case of a second incident, there was recent talk about after-school groups or bodyguards and the like. At first, those topics made Kanamori's heart race, but after a day or two, he became confident. Because the police investigation hadn't found Marie's corpse, it was focused on what happened after school. He began to feel he had completely slipped away from that line of investigation. He was asked by a child from his class where Marie could have disappeared to, and Kanamori refused as if in jest and said, "Could it be the curse of Mesomeso-san, I wonder?" "Oh, of course not. I can't believe I just said that. Let's make this our little secret, okay?" As expected, the students took those words all too well. Having her treated as a victim of Mesomeso-san, the school yokai everyone is crazy about lately, came as an added bonus. In school, the rumors about Mesomeso-san ran wild, and a new school ghost story began to take hold. With that in mind, Kanamori started to believe more and more that he was Mesomeso-san. It was that kind of day. After school, on his way to the staff room, in the middle of the empty hall, suddenly, he fell. When he fell, it was as if something had caught his elbow. It tore his skin and made him bleed. It wasn't a serious injury, but he pressed a tissue to his elbow so it wouldn't stain his shirt. "Oh my, Kanamori-sensei, are you all right? You're hurt," called out the vice principal who saw him by chance. How embarrassing. I must have bumped into something when I fell. I probably just slipped on a puddle a student neglected to wipe up or something." Kanamori said that, even though he knew more than anyone that he hadn't lost his footing like that. While he smoothed things over with the vice principal, he looked at the hall, and he was left doubting he could have slipped on anything. "Sensei, you seem to be bleeding quite a bit. It's seeping through your tissue." You're right. How annoying. Perhaps I should head to the infirmary and get myself patched up?" "You do that." "Oh, nurse! Kanamori-sensei seems to have hurt himself. Would you take a look at him?" Conveniently, from the other side of the hallway, the school nurse appeared. "Oh my, are you all right? Your elbow." The injury itself wasn't a big deal, but he didn't want the blood to stain his clothes. Kanamori thought as much, and he calmly headed to the school infirmary. The inside of the infirmary was filled with the smell of disinfectant, and feeling the pain from cotton wool soaked in that disinfectant brought back memories of my elementary school days. It was nostalgic. Before I knew there was something greater than being human, in those times I always felt looked down upon by those around me. Not wanting to be looked down upon, and wanting to look down on others. In those times, I bottled up my aggression against them. And by looking down on Marie, finally felt as if I had relieved myself from that complex. I didn't think I wanted to be a killer. But if this purge didn't free me from my complex, for the rest of my life, how long would I have to live in despair? If I thought about it, as for how long I could go on living, if I supposed Marie's life was ended for someone else's amusement, I thought it would be natural for them to go on living, seeking new ventures in life. Like the different links in the food chain. I was the predator. Marie was the prey. That was all there was to it. If I didn't eat her, then in the future, she'd be eaten by someone else. And so, I ate her early on, and in a deeply compassionate way, reset her existence. Although, even in her next life, she'll probably be eaten again. That girl is just that hard to teach after all. While I was immersed in my fantasies, I had a somewhat large band-aid put on and ended my treatment. When I mentioned my thanks and stood up to leave, ting, 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 tink, a small series of sounds reached my ears. Something the matter? No, I heard something just now, as if something fell over. Kanamori saw a small white thing had fallen on the floor and picked it up. It was made of plastic or something, and it looked like a small button. Even saying it was a button, it wasn't even a millimeter in diameter. But he understood it must have been an accessory for something. But when he turned his thoughts as to what it might have fallen from, he looked up above the medicine cabinets, and he understood what it was. That was something particularly out of place in this infirmary. A Western doll. It couldn't hide its worn-out state from its degradation over time, but there was no doubt it certainly wasn't something cheap. I compared the shape of the object I had just picked up with the doll many times, and I sensed it was certainly a button from this doll's clothes. This doll's button probably fell off. Oh, is that so? I'll have to sew that back on after you leave. After all, because it said that this child is the master of this infirmary. Master? This cute doll? Kanamori stood on his toes and took down the doll that sat atop the medicine cabinets, looking down on them. That doll was uniquely Western, and had a vaguely cold air to it. Kanamori had politely called the doll cute, but in his mind he thought of how it wasn't cute, but eerie. Yeah, but I've also heard about it from the former nurse, you see. She said this doll was here long before she started working, and it has been watching over the infirmary just like it is now. How absurd. Isn't it something some student lost? Well, I wouldn't think there's a student who would bring such a splendid doll and simply forget about it. Oh, that's right. They say this doll is a cursed doll, and the students are afraid of it, you see. So is this one of the school's 7 mysteries? Now that I think of it, the doll in the infirmary dances in the middle of the night. Or so I've heard from one of the students. I see. So they were talking about this doll, eh? Long ago, a doll that belonged to a girl who died in this infirmary took her spirit and became a yokai or some such. No matter what school you go to, there are plenty of stories like that. Oh, that's right. I don't know who named that doll, but sure enough it has a name. They say it's called Higanbana. Higanbana. It's not a particularly fortunate name, is it? Indeed, it just might suit this strange doll perfectly. However, isn't it wrong to be scaring the students by keeping that kind of doll there as a decoration? Well, there's also talk of a curse put on those who throw that doll away. It's not that I believe in curses, but since it's been watching over students in this infirmary for a long time, I'd feel kind of bad, you know? She sits there making sure the injuries of the students who come here don't get worse, and she protects them. Is that so? But where does this button go, I wonder? Ah, here. I'll sew it on later. See, it's her right sleeve button. Right sleeve button? Those were casual words, but it was something Kanamori wanted to forget and yet could not. Bits and pieces from his disposed memory began to stir. Yes, a regret from that night he disposed of Marie's corpse. It was an uncomfortable feeling. Just before disposing of Marie's body, when shining a light on the body to make sure nothing was missing, he certainly saw Marie's right sleeve had been torn. That night his attention was invariably divided, and so he didn't see how a single button mattered. He ignored it. But even so, it still left him with a bad feeling. That memory revived in his mind with a yelp as if a small rock had gotten inside his sock. This doll's torn off button. If it hadn't been the right sleeve, he wouldn't have noticed anything. Even so, it had to be the right sleeve's button. The same as the one torn from Marie's clothes, her right sleeve button! At that moment, Kanamori felt as if the eerie Western doll named Higanbana was sneering at him. What a foolish man. There are only two things that can evaporate or disappear from this world. Know what they are? Huh? What are you talking about? The preconception that there was no way a doll could talk to me blurred with that question. The things that disappear. Water and grateful souls. Just these two. She laughed at her own joke sarcastically, but the doll quickly froze her laughter and continued. Are you looking for Marie's right sleeve button? What is that button made of? Water? Grateful souls? There's no way a button could be made of water or souls. If it were top quality, it might have been made from shells, or if it was cheap, then it'd be plastic at best. Right. It's made of things that aren't water or souls, so there's no way it can disappear from this world. It can't dissolve or evaporate. So it must still be where it was dropped, right? It'll be where it was dropped always, until it's found by someone. It'll be there forever, won't it? The meaning of those words began to pain me. It was an inconvenience that most people would have wanted to quickly forget. And until today, I had forgotten it, that bad feeling I had about Marie's button. But no matter how I wanted to forget it, the button itself wouldn't disappear. It was surely there even now where it was dropped, and until someone picks it up, it's waiting there even now. That's right. I mustn't forget about that button that came off her right sleeve. There was no way the button was torn off from the beginning. If she were a crude boy, she wouldn't care at all about a single button torn from her clothes. But she was a girl. If a button was torn off, she could have certainly put it back on again. Even Marie was the methodical type. She wouldn't go through her daily routine with a single button missing from her right sleeve. So that button must have been torn off on that day. Kanamori-sensei? Is something the matter? No. Thank you very much. I just remembered I have some business to take care of. Sorry, now if you'll excuse me. Already the foundation for my mental state and sense of security were gone. If I continue aimlessly like this, sometime someone will find that button. Because the police have long known about the clothes Marie wore the day she disappeared, if by chance it winds up in their hands, they'll probably realize it belongs to Marie's clothing. What the hell am I doing being so carefree and letting this critical situation go? And where did that button fall off? Where I strangled her. That place. The old school building's bathroom in that stall. No, and yet, when I left there, I was sure I didn't leave any traces behind. But that was when I was in a hurry and only looked with a glance. I don't think I cared that much if a grain-like fallen button escaped my sight. I'm sure of it. It's there. It's in there. In order to not be seen by anyone when I entered the old school building, and stay there until I could be completely satisfied, all I could do was hold back my impatient mind and wait. In the infirmary, the nurse was still finishing up the day's work. Then she felt as if she heard a girl's laughter. Thinking there might still be students at school, she turned around, and the Western doll quietly sitting atop the medicine cabinet caught her eye. Obviously, there was no way Higanbana could laugh. She was a doll, after all. The nurse might have been a little tired. She thought after going home today, she would quickly get to bed. Which one is the better Mesomeso-san? That'll be a sight, won't it? Waiting until a vote is boring. Don't you think it'd be better if the two involved decided it themselves? I must be tired. I think I'll call it a day and head out. Higanbana giggled as she imagined what was beginning to unfold from this point forward. Of course, it was impossible for that voice to reach the nurse's ears. Now then, Marie, Kanamori, please show me who is more fitting, because everyone in our class are also hoping for something more interesting than a vote. Are you staying here, Kanamori-sensei? It won't be long until tomorrow, you know. Thank you very much, Vice Principal. I'm almost done here, so please let me stay here a bit longer. I understand, but please start finishing up, because if you get too many overtime hours, we might even get a complaint from the union executive office. Well, I apologize, but I'm going to have to excuse myself for the day. Since I think you will be the last one out, please set up the security system. Also, if it's not on by 11 o'clock, if you don't call the security company, they'll come check on it. Be really careful, please. Yes, I'm aware of that. I had forgotten about that. Although I hadn't planned on taking that long to check that bathroom. But if I end up bumping heads with the security company, there'll be all kinds of trouble. Tonight, Kanamori had been more discreet than ever before. Even more discreet than the day he killed Marie. After seeing the vice principal cross the campus with his own eyes, heeding the vice principal's advice, he called the security company to let them know he'd be working late that night. This is perfect. Now this time as well, with no one else except himself in the school late at night, no one would pay him a visit. So he left the staff room, and before heading to the old school building, he hid himself and watched to see if anyone was lurking in the school. Naturally, no sounds caught his attention. Only the cries of insects infested the old school building. When he allowed himself a breath, it sounded as loud as a storm in his ears. Outside the window was pure darkness. Because inside he had a light, outside of the glass in the hallway wasn't darkness. But the interior of the hallway reflected itself back again like a mirror. So immediately after seeing that, he could see himself being reflected. Inside that massive school building, he was alone. In the day the school bustles with many students and teachers, doubtlessly it was forming its own society. But that world was a different world separated from this world. It might even be said that the school occupied a different dimension. In that dimension, now he was alone. Society is order made by the many, and without numbers, when there's only one, it is a society no more. In other words, at this moment, in this separate school dimension, freed from the morals of so-called society, the world was his alone. If he ran in the halls during the day, he'd be scolded by his pupils, and if the vice principal saw him, he'd probably be made example of in front of the students, because no running in the halls is one of those rules of society. However, this school in the depth of night has now been set free from that society. In other words, the rules created by society can no longer reach him. After all, this is a world where he alone exists. And even if he ran ahead at full speed, there wasn't anyone to worry about. Even in this moment, he was the lord of this world. He had transcended his insignificant existence as a single man in the larger society. The more he thought about it, the more his impatience about quickly finding Marie's button began to dissipate. He began to feel surprised at how frustrated and impatient he was moments ago. If he had horns, if he had wings, then now more than ever he lengthened and grew them, unfolded and extended them. It had started as a laugh only in his mind, but then he realized even if that laugh escaped his mouth, in this world no one else could hear it. And so Kanamori, in an insanely wicked voice from the depths of his soul, howled with laughter as he headed to the former school building. However, the moment he stepped foot into the old school building, his demonic confidence retreated. It was replaced with a discretion as if his ruthlessness had frozen in ice. It even froze his inner demon. If he turned the lights on in the old school building, he might be seen by someone in the neighborhood. And so without turning on the lights, He illuminated his path with the thin glow of a flashlight. The frail light illuminated the world of pure darkness, but like an illusion, the length of that hallway seemed to continue all the way into the horizon, and from the inside all the doors had been closed and locked with the utmost care. And with this, he had completely severed himself from the world. He was torn and isolated from that school world. In other words, he was in a second world divided far away from the human world. If you've gone this far from the human world, you'll get closer to the spirit world, won't you? He felt as if he heard the voice of the doll whose button fell in the infirmary again. Of course, there was no way a doll could talk, so it was impossible for something that foolish to really happen. And yet this world of the former school building and the human world where dolls couldn't speak were two vastly different places. Maybe, here in this old school, lies a world where even dolls can talk? Oh, that's absurd. He had wanted to laugh, and after he dared let it pass his mouth, he felt as if the power he had earlier had been cast aside like a lie. It was something ingrained in his mind since childhood. He remembered unfounded rumors regarding the strange world of the school at night, and now they began to slowly work their effect on his mind. He wanted to say how absurd it was again. This time, as he tried to say the words, they were caught like a lump in his throat. He thought saying them might cause him to remember that emotion, horror, so he swallowed them back down. Because the former school building was getting quieter and quieter, his desire to deny that emotion amplified more and more. There might have been a leak in a water pipe somewhere. That strange sound he hadn't noticed during the day filled the bathroom. He had wanted to run and turn on the lights inside, but he held back his desperation, and he illuminated the area with the thin beam of his flashlight. Perhaps that stall door where I killed Marie is still shut, that place where Marie's sobbing Mesomeso came from. In the world in the daytime, this might have been a laughably cheap ghost story, but in this world, with about as much likelihood as a coin landing on tails, it held the chance of that horror becoming reality. Even though all he had to do was shine his light on that bathroom stall, he hesitated. Damn it! The hell am I afraid of? Marie's ghost isn't something to be afraid of. It's that fallen button the police might find that's important. How stupid. With a senseless grin, he tried to boost his morale as he shined his flashlight towards the stall. It was like he thought it would be. The stall hadn't been closed or anything. Naturally, there wasn't anyone inside. And there wasn't any crying voice sobbing Mesomeso. So that's it? He thought while checking it and sighed in relief. But in doing so, the fears he had restrained seemed as if they were about to resurface once again. He resisted. In any case, he set out to examine the bathroom stall. In the stall was a Japanese-style squat toilet. The moment he saw it, his hair stood on end as he felt the memories of that day resurface in his mind. Once this stall was an immoral place where I performed countless atrocities with Marie. Even though I remember those long days when I committed those indiscretions, they were all completely blotted out by my memory of that sole act, that day when I killed Marie. Because the Marie that revived in my mind wasn't the one that simulated me. It was when she carelessly tumbled to the ground, unaware of her indecency after I strangled her. When I remember her body, I felt just a slight sense of regret float from the bottom of my heart. But I quickly disposed of it, because if I allowed myself to entertain such thoughts, I thought all I was doing was acknowledging my own weakness. Take my daily meals, for instance. If I came to regret every single animal or plant I have eaten before, I wouldn't even be able to eat a slice of bread. And that's my attitude towards Marie. We're firmly placed in different levels of the hierarchy, and I'm placed in a higher position than Marie on the pyramid. And that's all there was to it. So things ended up as they should, and I don't need to regret anything. Just like there are no humans who shed tears of sadness from eating bread. Such stupid thoughts. Anyway, I have to see if that button is here. I felt as if I didn't scold myself, I would be sucked more and more into my delusions. Already it seemed like the air of this different dimension in the old school started to eat away at me. I had to quickly pull myself out of this strange world, or else I wouldn't be able to return from it. A sixth sense that had molded since childhood warned me so. I must hurry, but I had to relentlessly and carefully search. I didn't care if it was a toilet stall. I crawled down on all fours and searched as if I was licking the floor. On top of that urine-colored stained floor that eternally released its foul odor, I couldn't find the button that fell off Marie. Under normal circumstances, I might have thought that meant it wasn't here. But somehow I was convinced. I had no proof, but I had no doubt the button was here. It has to be here! It's not on the floor? Did I miss a spot? The moment I strangled Marie to death, the stall door was closed. Now the door was open so I could crawl around the stall. Maybe there's something on the inside of the door? Or possibly the outside? Even though I thought there was no way the button could be in such a place, I thought that if I didn't recreate the same stall from that day, I wouldn't be able to free myself from my delusions. So I carried out the first task in recreating it. I shut the door from the inside. Because it would naturally swing open if it wasn't locked, I locked the stall door. I caught a quick glimpse of the opposite side of the shut door, but the button hadn't stuck to it or anything like that. Then where is the button? Marie died here. She was killed here. And it was here that she fell. It was then that the button was torn off. I hadn't seen it, but somehow I knew. It must have been then! Then the flashlight's beam reflected with a flash. Covering the top of the toilet paper was a silver-colored dispenser. From its rough use by students, it had been squashed somewhat, but it seemed like it could still fulfill its role in conveniently cutting large sheets of toilet paper. And, above that paper dispenser, there was a pebble that looked like a white teardrop. It's here. This is it. I slowly took it between my thumb and forefinger. There was no mistake. This is it. It's that button. It was the very button that had been torn from Marie's right sleeve. That day Marie had the life squeezed out of her, and when she was exhausted, those hands of hers that fought against my choking arms dropped with a thump, and then that button somehow caught and tore off on the paper dispenser. That's how the button got here. I found it! I found it! I desperately resisted the urge to howl and laughter. I could think about this button as long as I wanted later. There's no need to overthink this. All I need to do is just drop it in the toilet and flush it like so. As the water flushed, the world of silence that had come to greatly haunt me was torn apart by its roaring sound. And in an instant it swallowed up the button, and its form had forever disappeared from the world above. Just as that doll said, because that button can't disappear, it'll probably remain in this world. But no one could find something like a tiny button that fell into the sewer. That would be harder than finding a bead in a desert. And so this was the same as sending it into the eternal abyss. Basically, this perfectly erases any traces of the murder I committed. I felt the unease from that day that remained in my mind slowly clear away. And as the roaring, flushing sound that had torn the silence began to slowly quiet down, I began to rise to where I was once before. I once again began to take back my place as a being that surpassed humans. Now, even holding back laughter was painful. I felt like I was going to burst out laughing right there. No, shouldn't I laugh? This is a world separate from the human world, and so I am alone. Isn't this world mine alone? And so I didn't hold back. My laughter cut through the silence, and once again I exposed my existence that was more than human. It was the greatest feeling. Until now I had never laughed with such joy once in all my life. And after laughing to my heart's content, after I had laughed so much I was in pain from the lack of oxygen I needed to breathe, I set out to leave the bathroom stall. I went to unlatch the lock. At that moment, my finger that touched the lock repelled as if it had been struck by static electricity. No, that's not the right way to put it. It wasn't as if my finger had been hit by static electricity. It felt as if, when touching it, it was better to say I had been struck with static electricity. Because, from the other side of the door, I heard the voice of a girl sobbing, Mesomeso. All the hairs on my body stood on end, and I felt a huge presence pass through me from head to toe. And so I stopped breathing, as if I were checking if that Mesomeso was an auditory illusion. But if it was real, there was no need for that kind of confirmation, because there was only one entrance to the old school building, and after I entered, I quickly locked it. There's no way someone could come in here. There's no way there were any students hiding out at this hour, and there's no way that someone is out there. Because basically hiding my breathing and checking was in itself confirmation that something was happening. But because I had to do that, does that mean that I clearly heard that Mesomeso just now? I got to calm down, check my ears, but that presence of that sobbing cry from the other side of the door, it won't go away. It won't leave. I'm just hearing things. It's a hallucination. I got too excited and went and heard something that isn't there. That's it. This has to be remnants of my humanity. This has to be those damn pangs of guilt. Surely, since I came back to the place where I murdered her, I must be feeling guilt for killing Marie. And I must be hallucinating Marie's ghost inside my mind. In other words, what's out there is my desire to blame myself, my good conscience. After all, you there, please listen to my pitiful story. Now it wasn't a voice in my head or a hallucination. There were words that reached my ears, and that voice, it was none other than Marie's. Marie? Is that Marie? Mesomeso. Whoever it was only cried, but that voice heaving with sobs answered my question. But on that day, I surely killed Marie and tossed her corpse into a septic tank. There's no way Marie could be here. No way could she still be alive. Now Kanamori was in the strange world of the former school building in the depth of night. He unconsciously came to realize the logic of the spirit world, because without being limited to the reasoning of the human world, where something killed no longer exists, he understood that on the other side of the door, the dead Marie was there. He understood? In other words, dead Marie's ghost was out there. He understood the truth that cannot exist. That crying voice from the other side of the door. No, while Marie's ghost continued its pitiful cries, she began to condemn him with her words. You forced me to do horrible things. And then you killed me in the end. That was the cruelest of all. Killing you was the right thing to do. Are you stupid? That's the only thing I did. Think about it if the police found out. It was the right thing to do. If I had let you live, you would have probably run to a police box with those legs of yours. Isn't that right? I wouldn't do something like that. After all, if I talked, then Sensei would distribute that embarrassing videotape. Videotape, huh? Did you really think something like that could be a threat to you? That's about how useful it was. But I wanted to return to a normal life. Because if you let me return to that normal life, I would keep what you did a secret. And I would have protected it. Oh, you could say anything with that mouth of yours, you see. You would have said that, and then that day after school, you would have gone to the police. Isn't that right? And if you asked the police for help, you would have done as they said and settled things immediately. The only place where nothing changes when people ask for help are in TV dramas. But Sensei has the videotape. If I broke that promise, then Sensei would. Even as a ghost, you're so, pathetic, truly pathetic. Did you really think that kind of tape would compare to tipping off the police? The police aren't stupid, you know. Before I'd release that tape, they'd arrest me. I'd be arrested before I could edit myself out. And they'd go in my house and seize the tapes, my equipment, everything would be evidence. If you truly believe that tape was blackmail material even after your death, then I congratulate you. Even in death, you make me laugh. That's how stupid you were, even in your last days. It can't be. It can't be. Marie's sobbing was tinted with even more sorrow. That you believed it could be used against you, I delightfully congratulate you from the bottom of my heart. Maybe you read too much manga, and you went and absorbed such useless knowledge, and in your foolishness you probably felt satisfied in the world you created. If you even had one friend to ask for help, you would have probably realized such a stupid mistake right away. But your worthlessness complex prevented you from making any friends. This world, you see, is society. Society is made up of relationships from person to person. And you, being denied those relationships and being left out, truly became the leftovers of society. And it's because of that you truly believe that worthless tape could have been used as blackmail material. How sad. As your homeroom teacher, I feel for you from the bottom of my heart. When I met with you and your parents and even advised you to make friends, you had nothing but excuses. To think I thought you realized it on the brink of death. Even after death, you still don't get it, do you? Are you saying I was stupid? Oh, I see. Then I give you the words straight from my mouth. You're an idiot. A blithering idiot. Even though you're a child, you pretend to take a philosophical view on life, and you've turned your status as a drop out in society into a virtue, and you felt it was too much trouble to even ask for help with your sorrows and dropped out of society. You've fallen out of the very bottom of the pyramid of human society. That can't be. Those terrible things I made you experience? That's right. That was my private lesson, you see. When confronted with a problem that can't be solved by yourself, what do? That's right. The answer was to ask someone for help. Even if you had asked your friends or your family, you might have had a chance at being correct. But you didn't make friends. You didn't even open up to your family, regardless of the instruction I gave you. And class time ran out, you see. It's not like time has run out. I didn't ask for help, but even though I didn't make friends, and I might have been wrong in not asking for help, but I fought against you. As I commanded you become like a cat or like a dog, you threw away your human dignity. and I will admit you did struggle somewhat. But that sort of thing has no value whatsoever. This resulted in that. You drove your opponent into a frenzy, and then you were really strangled to death. And your body was even thrown into a cesspool. Aside from those clumsy results, how would you like me to evaluate you? I can only say that you're an idiot. No points. You get a 0. That's what they call reckless courage, you see. Rather than that kind of courage, you should have had the courage to call the police. And you didn't even do that. What you are now is the result of that. And what part of that are you saying I should praise? They say that the only thing that can cure stupidity is death, but apparently they were wrong. It seems even in death, stupidity can't be cured. Would make more sense. Even Marie's soul after death was humiliated. Who decided departed souls were stronger than the living? There is no such rule. At the moment of death, at the moment one leaves life behind, their existence is inferior. The slight hope Marie held, that illusion that if she stopped being human, she could gain the strength to have her revenge after death, began to crumble. Because Marie understood now, this had nothing to do with whether or not she could become Mesomeso-san. Her power to avenge herself, no, the power to fight, it was the power to understand something, to do something. As much as she believed that if she became something other than human, she could have her revenge on the one responsible, in that kind of a position, there was no power she could fight with at all. The ones with the power to fight are among humans. No, to fight is to live. When she gave up living, she had lost forever. Because she had already died, regardless if Marie understood what it meant to truly fight, what it meant to truly have courage. She was above the requirements to fight in that arena. The requirement to fight. That was to be alive. Her homeroom teacher might have snatched her life from her, but listening to Higanbana offer to turn her into a yokai, that if she became a yokai she could rejoice in revenge, in the end it was truly pointless and foolhardy. And at the very least, if she had the courage to ask someone for help, she would surely still be alive. Still alive, fighting, perhaps even winning. That might have been her way out of this fate. She gave it up! And so her fate resides eternally within this man, without anywhere to run. This way, even after death, she would eternally continue being shamed. Marie's voice no longer came in sobs. They could only be described as wails. They weren't offensive as if to curse him either. Fixed with the fate of eternal shame, without fighting, if she could only cry in subjugation, with her lowly self. It wasn't that Marie thought her existence until now was sad, or even had regret. The thought kept crossing her mind that if she could go back to that day, she wouldn't have been violated like this. She became a victim, lost her courage and will to fight. She could no longer muster any strength. Nonetheless, she had left her will to live behind, and she came to believe in the daydream of achieving her vengeance by relying on others. Does that kind of person even have the right to live? Death was expected. She didn't have any right to live, and so being killed was the obvious result. In other words, it was inevitable. So you finally realized what kind of horrible existence you have, I see. I'm glad I gave you these supplementary lessons. Finally, those lessons were even able to teach you something. I can tell from your cries of regret. So perhaps we should end our class session? Kanamori reached out for the lock to the stall door that trapped him within. When he touched the lock, there was a tap sound, and that greatly terrified Marie. What are you doing? I'm ending class. Haven't you learned the importance of life just now? If so, then you should start over in your next life. Know what I mean? What do you mean? The door unlocked with a crack. When she heard that sound, Marie let loose a short scream. The lock was gone. If Kanamori opened that door, he would expose the Marie that was out there to his own eyes. For Marie, the terrifying man who killed her would once again appear before her. For Marie, the living Kanamori that lay beyond that door was still terrifying. Even up until now, she never even had the courage to look him in the eyes. But Kanamori already had the courage to look directly at dead Marie's ghost. After all, those fearsome spirits have already been wiped away from the world of human reason. Kanamori knew. On the divide between before one is robbed of life and after death, the souls of the dead can only stand in afterlife. A miserable life will lead to a miserable afterlife. Even though she had died, Marie was still Marie. Alive or dead, she realized it didn't matter which side of the divide she was on. But Marie realized that all too late, because reduced to a lowly spirit, now here she was. Well, since you can't rest in peace, it's time you showed me your wretched form. No. Don't open it! It's useless, you see. Ah! With the cruelty of an executioner dropping the bladed edge of a guillotine, Kanamori threw open the door. It was a bizarre scene. Even though he had opened the door from inside the stall, he was still there, in that stall. But Marie's figure was there, with the same appearance as the day he killed her, with the same right sleeve missing a button, with a wound left on her throat from where he strangled her to death. Ah! Marie uttered a frightened squeal and backed off, but it was already a small stall as it was. With no place to run to, her back was quickly up against the wall. She began to tremble, and as she quivered in fear of Kanamori, her eyes pleaded that he not come any closer. Truly, you are a helpless dunce. There is no test worthy of a student as bad as you. In your next life, be sure to think about what I taught you. I'll be praying that you get a more worthwhile existence. What do you intend to do? Sensei, since you appeared before me like this, it seems to me that you haven't fully realized that you've been killed. I'm saying that in order for you to fix things in your new life, Sensei is going to once again strangle you to death. No! That state of panic spilled over from when Marie was alive. The pain she felt when pinned to the wall of death was something only the dead could understand. That fear in knowing she would feel it once again could only be imagined from the beyond bizarre expression left on her face. No, I don't want to. I don't want to be killed. If you don't want to, then what will you do? You should ask for help, but there is no one here to help you. You're all alone here, you see. So what will you do? As Marie cried out and screamed, she grabbed Kanamori. As Kanamori's throat was gripped by both her thin arms, Kanamori's hands also grabbed hold of Marie's throat. Yes, fighting now is correct. Even if it's just for this moment, it's right, you see. But in your incompetence, you have no chance to defeat me alone. Perhaps I should end your demonstration? Even in death, you see, you are a fool! Even as they both gripped each other's throats, the difference in power was clear. Against Kanamori's grip that squeezed her like a vice, Marie's strength started to fade. Before she knew it, her arms no longer sought to choke Kanamori's throat, but instead changed to feebly resist the force of Kanamori's arms. How many challenges are there in this world that you can't win alone? In order to surmount them, people borrow power from society. In your final days, you ignored that. and you've come once again to repeat that mistake. If you can't rest in peace, then feel free to visit me as many times as you like. Over and over, I'll make you remember the pain of death. I'll strangle you to death forever and ever! In Marie's mind, the fear and pain from when she was driven to the border between life and death returned, and with her dead body she moaned with the pain of her neck being crushed. Now you will die again! Marie Moria! It was something he hadn't felt with his hands when he had strangled Marie to death before. At that moment, Marie's body jerked and shuddered, and as she stopped moving, her neck slanted diagonally. Without loosening his grip, he continued to strangle her as he laughed like a devil. At that moment, a voice that couldn't have been there came in an echo. Game set. I see. As for which of you is more suitable to be Mesomeso-san, clearly it's been decided. Looking up at who the voice belonged to, above the railing between the bathroom stalls, looking down on him, sat that Western doll he had seen in the infirmary. For Kanamori, who could now understand the existence of non-humans, this sort of thing didn't seem eerie. He thought she was surely a witness to his formal duel with Marie, and so he grinned and said, "Yes, I suppose. This is game set for a vessel like Moria-san's to become Mesomeso-san. It would be better if she never attained a post as one of the yokai eternally passed down in this school." I see. Allowing her the lowest seat among the school yokai is far too inappropriate. I think someone like yourself, in your wickedness, better fulfills the role, you see? If it's someone like you, even among the school yokai, you'll splendidly fill and protect that seat. If a human like yourself joins us in the lowest rank, even I'll have to be careful. I see. So this is a test that you school demons have made to decide who is more suitable to become Mesomeso-san? How cliché! That's right. We've voted, but there are 3 votes for Marie, and 3 votes have been cast for you. I abstained and made a different proposal. That the 2 parties themselves should fight out their differences, you see. Indeed. Basically, when you tossed your button in the infirmary, it was your invitation to this test? I see. But now it's been decided, right? That test about who will become Mesomeso-san? Yeah, the decision has been made. I'm so very sorry. That we cannot welcome a wicked human like you. Eh? At that moment, Kanamori felt a huge surge of power twist up his arms. In surprise, when he looked in front of him, Marie, whose eyes had already been opened and rolled back in her head, sputtered drool and began to twist Kanamori's wrist with horrific power. That thick sound could have been the sound of Kanamori's wrist snapping, or perhaps the sound of the back of his hands being crushed. Let go! With a giggle, Higanbana responded. Sorry, because I don't often get to meet such a wicked man like yourself. I'm truly sorry I couldn't welcome you to our class. What I wanted to test wasn't, you see, who was more vile, or who was a more suitable yokai. It was who was more suitable to be Mesomeso-san. You see? Kanamori, even though you said you wanted to become Mesomeso-san, did you forget the Mesomeso-san rules? Mesomeso rules? Ah! Now both Marie's arms crushed the bones in Kanamori's hands, but they sought to wholly embrace him. But that embrace wasn't one of love. It was a malicious embrace of death that sought to crush every bone in his body. Kanamori gave a scream as he cried while his ribs cracked. As if delighted from hearing the sound, Higanbana continued. That's right, the rules of Mesomeso-san. That if you meet Mesomeso-san, you must not speak with it. You must not see its true form. You broke those rules. Therefore, Marie wins. So, more and more, the sound of 2 small bones breaking in Kanamori's body began to leak out. Marie, do it. As Higanbana giggled, pressured Marie to deliver the finishing blow. But Marie let the strength of one arm go, and her expression wasn't the terrifying visage with her eyes rolled back in her head, but it was Marie's usual expression. Thank you, Sensei. What Sensei said was very filthy and painful, but I think it's as you say. If I hadn't learned it from Sensei, I might not have understood my sin even in death. I'm grateful that you were able to teach me like this even after death. Thank you, Sensei. From the very beginning when you protected me from those bullies, I loved you. Forgive me. And then came a strange noise. Compared to earlier sounds, they were like someone crumbling up a newspaper and violently tossing it in a garbage can. A crumpling noise. But this sound wasn't like paper, and just listening to it was a sickening, repulsive sound. That was the sound of every bone in Kanamori's body beginning to be crushed to bits. There was no longer a painful voice leaking out. His mouth overflowed with streams of blood, and the sound that could be heard gushing from there may have been Kanamori's dying agony that had been denied even being put into words. Or it could have been the heaving sound of everything from his lower intestines to all of his organs being squeezed out of him. One couldn't tell which. And then came the sound of the largest bone in his body folding with a crack. Then all that could be heard was the cries of insects in the night, and then the 2 school yokai were alone. Congratulations, Mesomeso-san Marie. You have been chosen. Can you hear everyone's applause? No. Even though everyone should reveal themselves, they feel too important. They're all nothing but shy individuals, you see. If you don't attain a bit more power, then it might be difficult for you to perceive them. Do you think the school yokai and I can get along? Who knows? Maybe it'll be difficult? You couldn't even make human friends. Could you make friends with non-humans, I wonder? I'll give it my all. Because if I can't relive my life, then at the very least I want to correct my past mistakes in this new one. Marie's expression overflowed with more determination than any other face she has shown until today. There are a lot of dead and depraved children, but a dead and determined child, now that's unusual. Of course, Marie, you're an interesting girl. No, a weird girl. Higanbana jumped over the railing, and then she took the shape of a human like the day they met in the library room. Everyone is going to want you to introduce yourself pretty soon. Also, I should probably direct you to our class. By class, could that be Classroom B? On the name tag on Higanbana's chest, the school year was blank, but the class name, B, was written there. That name tag that had once seemed blotted out by the rain. How was it now she could read it so clearly? Classroom B? You're wrong. It's Classroom 13. The numbers have gotten dirty. Sorry about that. Classroom 13. That kind of class doesn't exist anywhere in this school. And yet there was no doubt that classroom was in this school. Come, Mesomeso-san Marie. Take the hand of the doll that dances, Higanbana. Higanbana slowly reached out her hand. After hesitating ever so slightly, Marie took her hand. it wasn't because she was scared. The job of a school yokai is tough, you know. We must surround ourselves in ill omens and wickedness as we dye the dark of night even darker. Yes. And if the night was truly dark, only then will daylight brightly shine upon the school. If one wicked teacher is swallowed by the dark night, then in a day the school will become a better place, won't it? But congratulations. This was your first victory, right? You really strive for it, so be sure to keep a count, all right? Count? Count what? The number of people you've cursed to death. This was your first, you see? No, I don't want to count something like that. Well, that might be why you're interesting, Marie. But with that kind of faint-heartedness, maybe you'll even be bullied in art class? If I'm bullied, then I'll ask my friends for help. Friends? Like who? Would Higanbana-san please, well, become my friend? This doll that dances Higanbana become your friend? But I think you should wait a little longer when it comes to choosing your friends. For a while, Higanbana, even though this was no laughing matter, split her sides with laughter. And when she was finally finished, she shrugged her shoulders. If Maria's fine with that, then it's fine. If it was someone who knew the real me, then I wouldn't take up such a reckless proposal. Perhaps ignorance is bliss. Higanbana-san, you might seem cold-hearted, but, well, I think you're a good person. Really? Yes. Does that bother you? Thanks. Eh? Higanbana let go of Marie's hand and walked down the hallway alone. It's this way. Do you see? The hallway extends. It won't come out for humans and they can't see it. Do you see it? Yes, I can see it. The impossible hallway extended far away into darkness. When she was human, there would have been a wall there, but now the hallway stretched far into the distance. Then come! Following after Higanbana, Marie entered the darkness. At the end of the day, no one had seen Kanamori. Of course, neither had they seen Marie Moria. But the one called the Master of the Infirmary, the Western doll called Higanbana, was even now sitting atop the medicine cabinets. There was a rumor that inside the bathroom of the former school building lived a yokai. It was said each night one could hear the accursed screams of the pitiful teacher who had been strangled to death. In accordance with the recent school reorganization when the school became a mammoth school bursting with pride at the number of students it contained, so too, then, came the strange school tale about the 7 mysteries, adding one more to their number.